The reality we live in can be a very strange place. Most of the time, fact being stranger than fiction. How will we ever start to understand this reality we live in unless we question everything? Join me and a guest as we unravel the mysteries of this reality, one topic at a time. This is Inquiries for Reality with Shayn Orin.
What is up, Inquirers, and welcome to the expanse of deep open-minded conversation. I'm the one they call Shane, and today for you guys, it's been a hot minute since we've dived into the UFO/alien phenomenon, or at least I feel like it's been a hot minute, and especially with today's guest, it's been a hot minute. He hasn't actually been on the show since the early under 100 episodes. He was one of the people that came on and was kind enough to share his 20 and back experience and all the experiences he's had pertaining to that experience. And today he comes back on sharing some more information that he has dealt with pertaining to that, extending to a little bit on the last time he came on. And of course, we also kind of dive into some of the modern UFO phenomenon, his kind of perspectives on a lot of the stuff going on. And of course, we dive into some more conspiratorial viewpoints of society and everything. Definitely a fun, fascinating conversation. I think you guys will thoroughly enjoy it, and it's definitely a great return since today's guest hasn't been on the show for a while. But before we get into today's episode, nothing too crazy as far as news and updates go. Just one quick thing. April 3rd will be the next time that we'll be doing another live episode of Bizarre Inquiries. Had a lot of fun on the last one, and we appreciate all of you guys that end up stopping by. And hopefully we'll have more of you guys that'll end up popping by for the next one, throwing in your suggestions, ideas, all that type of stuff over in the chats. And if anybody has anything that they would like us to discuss for that April 3rd show, you guys can send it to us through email, social media, or whatever way you guys want to choose to get up with us. And you guys can either send in articles, clips, questions, whatever you guys happen to want us to discuss. And I forgot to also mention that will be, of course, on the Open Minds Media YouTube at 7:15 p.m. But of course, more information will be given as we get a lot closer to that date. And before we get into the show, if anyone would like to be a guest on the show, or if anybody has had an encounter or experience that they would like to share on the show, or possibly even have me investigate, you guys can email me at inquiriesofourealitypodcast@outlook.com. Or you guys can either call or text the hotline, and that number is 313-364-1551. And every single thing that I mention and will mention throughout the entire show will be available on the link tree, which is available down in that show description. And with that, let's get into the show. Please welcome back to the show, returning guest from episode 64. So it's been a very, very long time. Please welcome back to the show, Tony Rodrigues. How's it going today, man?
Hey, Shane. It's going great, man. Thanks for having me back. It's been a long time. Like, a lot's happened since the last time we were on.
Say, it was almost like the beginning of the show. Like, you were one of my first guests, and now it's been, I'm sure a lot's changed for the phenomenon. A lot's changed going on with the UFO phenomenon as a whole. A lot's changed with you. I'm sure we got a lot of stuff to dive into today, man. And actually, I ended up texting you and hitting you back up to have you come back on the show, because I heard somebody mention you on a podcast recently, and I'm like, hey, I haven't talked to that guy in a long time. It feels like it's about time to touch base with him again, so...
Right on. I don't mind. It's an honor. Anytime anybody asks me to speak about what my account of things, it's an honor. You know, it's like it's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. So to come on and talk about it on shows is a big deal for me.
Well, I guess a good spot to start for anybody that may not have listened to the first time you came on the show, because it's been a very long time. Why don't you let people know a little bit about your background, a little bit about what you do, what got you into studying all of this stuff, your personal experiences, and honestly, just kind of wherever you want to start to kind of lay the groundwork for what you kind of want to progress into today.
Trying to think where I might have left off in 2022. When was the last time? So, to be quick about it, I am a normal guy from the Midwest. I'm from southern Michigan originally, and I was abducted when I was a kid and put through what is the term that's coined the 20 and back, or the career return program. So United States government officials working in conjunction with extraterrestrials using radical life extension technology or cloning technology, and they take people and they can hold them and have them be workers or what be it for 20 years. And then they have the technology to put them back the same exact night. So it's very difficult to say that with a straight face and expect people to digest it all. If you weren't skeptical, it'd be weird, right? From what I'm about to say. But I was taken, as far as I can tell, April 16th, 1982, the night of, I woke up with a gray ET in my bedroom, and they abducted me and took me to a base and did medical procedures on me. And then through some advanced technology, I stayed with them for 20 years. I woke up in California, in Kern, California, and was in a advanced remote viewing research program for better part of 9 months, and then shipped off to Peru, where I was a intuitive, like a psychic, that they would drug me and I would know, and they were running drugs in Peru, and then shipped me off to Seattle. And we were privately owned by a billionaire there, not Bill Gates. Everybody always says it, jumps to that. But then at the end of that stint, and around 1987 or so, I was sold off to the secret space program. So the military industrial complex has colonies in space, bases in space, and space stations in space, all through the solar system and nearby stars and probably distant stars. So in conjunction with ETs, they have the ability to travel great distances instantly. And there are millions of people living in the solar system in a Star Trek-like world as we speak. And so I was for about 12 years, I worked on UFOs. I was a machine repair maintenance guy for the first 8 years or so. And then I was promoted to cargo engineer on a more advanced craft. And I was based on the planetoid Ceres, which is in between Mars and the asteroid belt. At the end of it all, they put me back through some kind of time travel and some kind of consciousness transference, whatever, I don't know. And I woke up the next day, April 17th, 1982, in my bed, and I had felt like I was gone for 20 years, and I had no memory. I didn't remember my toys. It felt like I'd been gone for 20 years, but I had no memory of what happened. It was just awkward feeling. I went to school and forgot my way around school. I went down and hugged my mom and dad. I hadn't seen them in so long. And I got on with my life. And in May of 2015, I got an MRI scan on my head. I had been having persistent headaches. And so as a checkup, they did an MRI. And about 10 days later, all the memories came back of the 20 and back. Sounds crazy. Here we go. I hope people listening are going, whatever, this dude's nuts. But at the beginning of that, when I got those memories back, began the searching. And I was able to find the places that I was in Kern, California, in Seattle, in Peru, that existed, that I woke up one day and had memory of living in Peru for 2 years. And then I got on Google Earth and I found it exactly how I found the place in the jungle that nobody knows about, and zoomed in, and it was exactly how I remembered it. Same with Seattle, the same with Kern. I went to Seattle in person. And then recently in October of 23, I went to Kern in person and walked in the exact same building. We filmed it. Tyler Koala from Journey to the Truth podcast went with me and documented it. We filmed. I knew my way around the town. I knew the buildings. We went inside the place where I woke up. And I remembered a lot of the research that we were doing, which was advanced remote viewing and psychoenergetics research in between Project Grill Flame and Project Center Lane by the Stanford Research Institute and Army INSCOM. And I went home and had a fire under my ass and started researching it. And I found a ton of paperwork. I found the paper trail, the funding, the people involved, on and on and on. And I wrote my third book, Beyond Sight, The Hidden History of Remote Viewing and Psychoenergetics, which is my most recent book. And it tells how to remote view and the history of it and some of the advanced stuff, remote viewing countermeasures, psychoenergetics, remote influencing, many things. And I found documentation and put those in the book too. Since then, I have a Patreon channel. TonyRodrigues.com is where you can find me, but I have a Patreon and I teach remote viewing. I have 4 teams. I have upwards of 50 people that I teach remote viewing to, and we beat the odds every single week. We're doing remote viewing. So it's not like a lot of people think it is. It's a blind protocol. People have no idea what the target is, and they describe the target well, but we use military protocols and we research experimental things that I remember. So we've been able to reproduce the blocking, remote viewing countermeasures. We've been able to reproduce other stuff. So I'll leave it at that. So that's what I do. That's what I do for a living nowadays. In the last 3 years, since the last time I was on your show, I became a remote viewing instructor, and it's my full-time gig.
Well, that's awesome. I think last time I had you on the show, you had only just written your first book. So we haven't even gotten to talk about anything that you've talked about in your second or your third book. So I would definitely love to kind of dive into that a little bit more. But just a couple of quick questions before we start rolling into that stuff. First and foremost, I've only had the opportunity of talking to 2 people that have talked about having a 20 and back experience. And just out of curiosity, because I asked this to the other person that I had on who had this experience, do you think that there was any particular reasons why they had chosen you for this, or do you think it was at random? Like, what's kind of your feeling on that?
It was not random. So I went to school with a kid, and I was in the talented and gifted program in 4th grade in Lincoln Elementary School in 1982. And there was a kid that came to school in a limousine, and we did not get along. I picked on him. He picked on me. We were rivals in the class. We met every Wednesday for 2 hours in the library. That was the program. And he said, "My dad's an Illuminati. What's your dad do?" Like that. I remember that. It's something I never forgot. And in the April, his dad came in. So April 15th, 1982. I hope I'm getting the day. I might be a day off. It might be 14, 15, 16, whatever. It's right around that time. His dad was the judge of the science fair. And when I walked by them in the cafeteria, we were setting up our science exhibits. He said, "Dad, that's that boy I told you about." So this was Wednesday, April 15, 1982. And Thursday, April 16th, 1982, I was abducted. So they put me on a list, and that's why I was taken, and they threw me in as slave labor through the side door of these programs. I was not groomed or meant to be in these programs. It was more of a punishment. And they took my dad too. More than likely, when they came to my house, the ETs came to my house, and they told me that there was a genetic marker. Not everybody can go and do a 20 and back. The technology relies on certain genetics. I don't know which one, to be honest. I don't know if it's the way the ships travel or putting you back or age regression or the cloning. I don't know, man. But I know that they were looking for a genetic marker, and they said that I had just barely enough genetics to go for one tour. Some people have the genetics to go for more than one tour. And but I had the genetics for one, and that's why I think they took me. So I hope that answers your question.
I've been hearing a lot of people recently talk about something called the GATE program, which seems to have taken place mid 80s to like early 2000s, but it seemed like it was this, like a lot of people remember like the weird hearing test that they did with it. I don't know if this was before or after when you were in school that they started doing this stuff, but they'd put you in this like box thing and they'd make you listen to like different hearing things, and they'd start kind of trying to pick up these like different cues from people. And I'm almost kind of curious if there might be a connection between this semi-recent phenomenon that people are talking about and starting to regress about with the GATE program, and if there may have been something with who they're picking for these 20 and back programs. But I mean, I kind of want to hear your thoughts on that one, but even on the other side too, I remember last time you had mentioned a few other things that kind of brought some validity to anybody that may not believe in the whole 20 and back concept, that not just the locations on Earth that you were talking about, but you'd mentioned that there was a few other things that were some connecting pieces that, you know, people wouldn't have known, that were stuff that had happened out in space. So also for anybody that may not be on the same page, if you want to kind of fill them in on some of those details that could kind of bring some validity into their mind too.
Early on, there was a whistleblower that was talking about a ship in space, and I remembered seeing that ship, the name of it mentioned, and then that person turned out to be disingenuous. And so I caught a lot of flack for sticking up for the name of his ship. But it is something that I nonetheless do remember. So I believe that that guy was taking information, was a hacker and hacking real people and then using their information as his own and trying to copyright it and profit from it. So I think it was a scam. There are other things. There are common denominators from people that have been through the phenomenon, for sure. So there are things that are left over. There are things that you bring back with you that only another person really can see it. You know, the way that you behave. It's kind of like, guys that spent a lot of time in Vietnam, and then they meet another guy that says he was from Vietnam, and they don't behave the same, and you can tell it was not real. He's lying. And the same thing. It's like when you go through those things, it changes you in a way that you can see in other people. For one. For two, there are a lot of common denominators for people that go. That's the essence of my next book I'm working on. I've worked with over 2,000 people personally since I went public in 2016. The people that saw my interviews and said, Tony, I think I went through the same thing. Can we talk? And I started charging because there were so many people, and they get mad when you don't get back at them, you know, and I was just inundated with people that said, I've been through the same thing, and they just wanted somebody to talk to. And I started keeping files of people and realizing it's the same thing. It's the same story over and over again, that there's an intake event. There's a life change. There's a list of things that leads them to the intake event. Parents, neighbors, their location where they're at, instances, you know, military contact, some mom, dad in the military, and ETs. And then I roll the clock forward 20 years, and there's another behavior change. Like there's a sequence of events for somebody that goes through this that shows up in their life. And so it leads me to believe that people are genuine when I talk to them, and they say things that they never saw in a podcast and nobody else could know. Right. So there's a lot to that.
Hold on tight, everyone. Inquiries of Our Reality will be right back after this brief commercial break. But if you don't mind taking a second to follow Inquiries of Our Reality on Instagram and Facebook, and Open Minds Media on YouTube and TikTok, I'd greatly appreciate it. And feel free to spark up a conversation. I love getting to know you guys. And now back to the show. So trying to connect some other pieces with this whole thing too. So I don't know if you get into the whole like multi-dimension theory with everything, or if you're a little bit more just more into like the astral realm aspect of things, but trying to kind of understand the phenomenon of the 20 and back. I've been kind of curious if it's potentially possible if you kind of follow somewhat of like the simulation theory concept that, you know, the reason why somebody might get pulled out and put back at that exact point might be because if we are living in some type of like organic simulation or experiment, it's rather that they're like taking you out and bringing you into the real world. Or on the other side of things, if you kind of get into the whole like parallel dimension aspect of things, you know, maybe they could potentially pull somebody off of their timeline to go on to this other timeline. Like even with that theory, I mean, a lot of people think that we're the main timeline, but I mean, we may not be the main timeline. Maybe that's why there's all of these weird phenomenons of people getting picked off and brought to other places is because we're not the main one. But I don't know, what's kind of like your belief system on that? Do you think it's happening within our reality? Do you think that people are getting pulled to somewhere else? Like, how do you kind of feel about it?
This is an important question, and there's an overwhelming consensus that there are multiple timelines that people go out. The Shayn, you're taking off this timeline. You go to another one. You're you're the general of the armies of Mars, and you know what I'm saying. Like you live this whole thing, and we did time travel on Sirius Colony. The ship did something called anti-telephoning, and when they did alter the timeline, the main timeline immediately corrected. There is something as a dimensional phase where they can hide things, they can turn invisible by phasing slightly out of reality to a phase. It's a phase. It's still reality. It's still the same exact timeline, and it's still the same reality, but it's a different frequency of it where they can be basically invisible like ghosts and not interact with different things. Certain things exist on all of them. Some people say, Dan Willis says his quartz stays the same in all the dimensions, all the frequencies of dimension. However, I think it's an op that there's a timeline to excuse everything. Like you went to another timeline, and I went to a timeline. So, I was taken, and it was another timeline, and then we came back to this timeline. I don't believe in that. I really don't. From what I remember, there was one timeline that gets affected, and there are frequencies that branch off of it that are still in the same timeline, but that can be affected. I believe that during my 20 and back, I could have met myself. Had I traveled to Seattle, there was another me at a house in Seattle, which was essentially a clone or another person, me on the same exact timeline. The reason I believe that is because everybody, and I'm not lying when I say upwards of 2,500 people that I've interviewed personally for hours at a time, all report the same thing. From the moment they're taken, their lives are diluted. So I was a straight A student. I was in the top 5% of the school in grades, and I set the records at that age in fourth grade for the SAT tests. Like, I set the record on my school. So I was a very smart student. The day after, when I went back to school, I became an E student, and I eventually dropped out of school and fought with substance abuse all through my 20s. When the 20 and back was over, one day I magically woke up and I said, it's over. I didn't know why I was saying it. I said, it's over. It's over. And I looked at my life and it didn't make any sense. And I got my shit together and was back to myself. So what I'm saying is, when they take you, and there's two of you on the same timeline, each of you is half. And that's why they're scanning kids for the brightest. Because if you take somebody that's inherently not that bright and you cut them in half, you get less of a worker on both ends. So they take people that are very bright and cut them in half, and they're both average. And it seems to me that that's what's happening. So that your consciousness as it is a 5-gallon bucket of water. And when they clone you and put 2.5 gallons into the clone to drive it, you have 2.5 gallons of consciousness in you for that 20-year span, or however long it is. And at the end of it, when they kill the clone and put it back, because that's the law, they have a law that says they have to do that, you get your 2.5 gallons of water back and you get your life together. And I have seen people tell me that exact same sequence of events thousands of times. So, that's why I believe that that's the case. A lot of people are justifying everything nowadays to say, well, it's another timeline. Me and him were friends at a time. I was your commander in a timeline. We were on another timeline. I was a doctor. I did this and that. I'm like, well, on this timeline, you should be able to recreate some medical machines. You should have knowledge. And that's not the case from a lot of people that are switching timelines. So you should come back and understand how it worked, what you were doing. If you were a general, then you know how to run an army. And so, where's the technology from your time and space is my question. I've got 3 companies right now, reverse engineering technology. I'm very successful with 2 of them from what I remember happening up there. And so I don't know. I feel like I'm being hawkish, and I don't want to be. But I'll tell you what, man, in the last 3 years, I've taken a lot of abuse from people that frankly are fakes.
Oh, no, I don't blame you, man. Because when it comes to the 20 and back thing, it's like you have those people that will drop information that is undoubtable, and then you have the other half that'll come at you and they'll just start kind of spewing this like random information. I definitely had both on both sides, which is why I've kind of hand selected who the people I've had on who had these experiences are. Particularly, I try to bring the people on that I honestly believe that they went through these experiences. But kind of going back to not so much of the timeline thing, but kind of just trying to make another, I guess, example of how I think this could potentially work. So theoretically, say you have like the timeline itself, and just imagine it as like a straight line. And then you have this point where there's this person that you want to take them. And this is the part where I'm going to kind of ask you about, because I don't know how time necessarily works when you're in the 20 and back. But
this will bake your brain.
If you took somebody that was on that timeline and you basically did this thing where you didn't take them off their timeline, but you almost like stretch it. Like imagine it like a rubber band, that you pull them out so far sideways on the timeline that they still age, they still grow, but then you can only do it that 20-year point, and then you let go and it snaps back, and that's when the timeline corrects itself. So it's not that the person is being pulled off the timeline, but imagine it more as like a differentiation off of the timeline that will eventually snap back to that original timeline. But within that straight line that's still existing, where that snapped rounded part's out at, there is still that other version of yourself, which kind of gets into what you were explaining with the other version of yourself that needs to be corrected. But when that timeline gets put back together, once that side point where you've been kind of almost like pulled off of time comes back, then that's where it would have to be corrected. Like, does that seem like there might be some validity to that, or that might make any sense?
I have a graphic that shows how the 20 and back looks timeline wise. that everything that I've studied over the last 10 years alludes to. So what you're saying is that somebody's in a quantum time dilation where time for them happens quickly compared to the rest of us, and they live for 20 years and then they're right back where they go. The thing that I would add to that from my own experience was that while I was in Seattle, it was the same time passing. Like I lived through the 80s twice. And so it was the same songs on the radio. Aha's Take On Me came out and they were playing it at the parties. It was the same movies that we watched on VHS when I was in Seattle as I was watching in Michigan at the same time. So it was the same timeline and it was the same time. So that's why I believe there were two of me. I think that the technology is more than I'm aware of. In other words, I went in, I always equate it to, I went in for a surgery and then they let me go. And I have no idea what happened during the surgery. Like most people do. You go in and get a surgery on your spleen or your heart and they put you under and they open you up and you don't know what they did, the procedure. And they say, how was your heart surgery? What happened? And like, that's so I admittedly don't know everything about what I went through, but I can tell you that after I was 5 or 6 years into my 20 and back, I had access to the radio in the 80s, and it was the same music. There were Aerosmith albums being released. Take On Me was a big hit, right? Remember that song with the video on, so I remember that song being released and played at parties over and over with Led Zeppelin and other artists. When I went back to my life, and then the other thing is the 20 years happened first. So I was taken and I lived those 20 years in the programs. And then I went back to the next morning in 82 and then lived my life after that. And memories bled through of what was going on. But once I was driving down the road with my older brother and an Aerosmith song came on the radio and he said, yeah, this is their new song. And I said, what do you mean it's new? This is like super old. It's been around for like 15 years. And he goes, no, dude, the album just came out this week. He's like, this is a new song. And I was like, we got an argument about it. I argued about it. And it was a new album. But for me, it was old by decades because I had experienced it in the 20 and back in Seattle and then lived till series and space and then was put back to 82 and then waited for the song to come out. So for me, it was a very old song. And Aerosmith had been around for a long time, so they already had old music back in the late 80s. And but that was the experience. And I'm like, I don't want to argue with you about what you're saying or shoot it down. But what I'm doing is saying from my experience, it led me to believe that I was taken. I lived on the timeline first as a clone, as two of us, diluted, with my consciousness diluted. Like both of me were kind of stupid all of a sudden. And then at the end of it, they killed me and I put me back somehow through however technology they did. And I woke up the next morning back in 1982, April 17th, Friday, April 17th, 1982. And I lived my life. And at the end of the 20 years, so they took me and I lived this 20 years and then they put me back, killed me. And then I lived this 20 years and I was still deluded because there were two of me on the same timeline. And when the other one was done after the 20-year mark, I snapped out of it and I got my act together. Something like this, the personal information is all through my 20s, my teens and my 20s, I could never have a girlfriend. Every time I met a girl and started dating her, I was just emotionally like a wreck. And I couldn't string together a relationship to last more than 2 months, really. And there's a list of girls out there that'll tell you what an idiot I was, what a nut job he was. I was just emotionally not grown. I was dissipated. At the end of the 20 years in 2002, 6 months later, I met my wife and we stayed together 23 years because it was me again. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, because my consciousness reasserted and got it together. And all of a sudden I had my emotional maturity all in like overnight. And it really did feel like that. It really was a life change. The day I woke up and was telling myself, I walked out, I was driving this crappy van, this oil leaking van. And I'm like, what is this? I got to get rid of this. This was all in one morning. I walked out and said, I can't be driving this thing. And started, started making moves. And within 6 months, met my next girlfriend. And because I had my emotional, act together, because I was reintegrated, it was a relationship. It was easy to make the relationship work. And so we stayed together for, so that's my perspective, right? And I'm the first one to say the memories are distant, the technology is exotic, and I'm sure I have a lot to learn. So I always try to just add my testimony on how I remember it, so that guys like you that are researching, you talk to other people, you have something to compare it to, like.
I'm glad that you brought up that what you were just saying, actually, because there's a theory that I had suggested on the show a long time ago about the function of like UFOs, that people will talk about basically seeing these phenomenon that'll happen where like one craft will split into like multiple crafts, but when they split into multiple crafts, they seem a little bit more transparent than the original craft. And what my suggestion was that they had some type of advanced technology where basically they could say there's so many particles in this split area, and you could basically separate those into two separate areas, or even split, say that there's four particles within this one particular space. You could split that into four individual things, and basically there would have to be a point where everything would have to come back together. So if you kind of layer that technology, that could potentially be something that they're using for their crafts to kind of almost like flank or split out. And you also add in the fact that people have kind of been researching these things, that they're not necessarily they might be from like a higher dimension or from like a higher plane, and they kind of traverse back and forth. And when you start getting into that stuff, they talk about how like our dimension is made up of time. And if you get to the next dimension higher, then basically you can look at time almost like a river that you could hop in and out at any point. So if you combine that technology of basically being able to like phase the particles of something where either one, it's not vibrating on the same frequency or pitch as this reality so you can pass through it, or two, you can basically split something that would be in one condensed area into four less condensed areas, on top of that next dimension up, being able to manipulate time. I mean, it seems like, you might have a mix for how these 20 and backs could potentially be happening to people.
Yeah, like I said, the time in Peru and the time in Seattle and in Oregon with the people that have been found. So there's things that I really can't say publicly without getting in some form of repercussion. But I've met people that were involved as well, that consciously involved, and they can't talk about it legally. They can get in trouble for it. But people that were in the program that I was in remembered me specifically. And, I looked the same. It was me, and it was in the same timeline. So these are people that are alive today that worked in the research program back in the 80s. And they were there when I was in it as well. So what you're saying about the craft, I mean, it's anybody's guess. And the one thing that's important to understand is that ufology, we think that there's only the Greys or the reptilians or the Nordics. Like, that's it. There's nobody else visiting us. It's just the nearby stars that are visiting us. There's only ETs from the stars we can see in the night. And that's not the case. What I remember of the secret space program is that we could go pretty much anywhere in the galaxy and to about 18 nearby galaxies and be home in the afternoon. It was instantaneous, or almost instantaneous, very short trips, which means all of those stars, we're talking about, 400 billion stars in our galaxy, and then 18 more galaxies, so a few trillion stars with worlds, can access us and go home in the same day as well. So we're not getting visited by one level of technology or one or a handful of species. We're being visited by almost infinite number of species and at different levels of technology. So some of them can phase, some of them come from other dimensions, some of them can split their ship apart like that, and some of them are driving clunkers, like just barely getting by with space. They're driving the old clunky discs. And so we're getting visited by, and for all different reasons. Some of them want to eat us. Some of them want to help us. Some of them want our genetics. Some of them want to take some, who knows, for every different reason as well. So that's why when you investigate, if you're a pure researcher and you investigate ufology, it looks like gibberish, because there's so many. So the accounts aren't the same. You talk to people in Australia, it's like it was an angel that visited me and he healed me. And then you talk to somebody in the UK and it's like, they took me, it was a demon and they tortured me. And so you get everything in between. You get all the experiences in between. Or I just thought it was here, and then the grass turned and made the spiral, and then they disappeared. And so we get all these things, all these different, this wide palette of contact. But the reality is that's what's up there. We are really ignorant thinking that we're the only ones when it's quite the opposite.
Hold that thought. We'll be back in a flash. But if you don't like hearing the ads, then I have a solution for you. You can get ad-free and early access to this show and Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin on the Open Minds Media Patreon for just $1 a month. That's less than a bag of chips, and it's a great way to support the show and all the hard work behind it. And if you're interested in merch store discounts, live access to episodes, or premium video versions of episodes, then there are a few other tiers with additional benefits with 7-day free trials available. And we are back, so let's hop right in. Man, this phenomenon completely expands and changes once you realize that it's not just this reality we're dealing with. We're dealing with parallel realities. We're dealing with dimensions going up and down. So it's not just this reality. There's layers on top of it going left and right, up and down in every single direction. And on top of all that, you have different species like you were mentioning. And just like humans, people can't expect that every single gray is going to act the same or every single this is going to act the same. Because even within humans, you take this group of humans and this group of humans, and they're both going to act completely different, have totally different intentions for what they're doing, and again, you never really know even fully what you're dealing with.
Even in the same country. So even if you take people, it's like saying, is the United States evil? Right? Yes, there are some evil people in the United States. There's groups in the United States that have done some terrible things. We have all of the documentation. We look at MK Ultra and all those projects that they were giving syphilis to people. Like we take parts of the CIA, the government, like they did evil stuff. Is the United States righteous? Yes. There are people that do righteous things. There are people that help out, and there's medicines that we develop. There's corporations that try to hire and do outreaches. There's groups of people who do charity on a vast scale. Is the United States neither? Yes. It's like everything. The ETs are no different. So everybody wants to lump the ETs into all of those reptiles are bad, and all these Nordics are good, and the grays are good or bad or whatever. And the reality is it's way more complicated than that. We're talking about species that have billions and billions of people in their species on several worlds, and they have different agendas for when they deal with us. Some of them do hate us. Some of the grays will never like us, no matter what. And some of the reptilians will never like us, no matter what, but some do. And so it's a complicated thing. I think the other thing is we've been trained from birth. All of your lullabies, your bedtime stories, your books, Jack and the Beanstalk, it had a guy that was always the good guy, and it had a guy that was always the bad guy. And so we're trained to believe in the good guy, period. Like that guy's good. He's always going to be the good guy. That's it. And the bad guy is bad. And the thing is, it's training to get you to sign up and be a soldier when they start demonizing the national enemy. So it's a brainwashing. The thing is, nobody is always the good guy, and nobody is always the bad guy. It's relative to your perspective and what the goal is. Some people are bad. I'm not giving people an excuse. I'm not giving the mass murderer, pedophile people an excuse or a pass. But what I'm saying is, it's just not what we've been trained to believe. That those are all bad. Those are all bad guys. Don't talk to them. That's not real.
Dude, talk about the programming being flipped, though, because this is something that I've noticed recently. There's a lot more stuff where it makes you sympathize with the bad guy. And it seems like there's a lot of movies now, especially kids' movies, where the bad guy ends up becoming the good guy. And I mean, I don't know if like that mental manipulation plays into all of this stuff that we're talking about, or if it's trying to kind of blend these lines a little bit more. But it seems like 80s, 90s, 2000s, clear good guy, clear bad guy. But now everything's the bad guy, and then the bad guy turns into the good guy. You feel bad for the bad guy. You sympathize for the bad guy. Like, it's a weird transition. You don't see those hard lines anymore.
So what you're seeing in pop culture is they're undermining traditional roles. When we talk about, especially with gender and the LGBTQ, I don't know all the letters, and I don't mean to offend anybody. I really don't. But when we talk about that culture, they have traditionally been the bad guy when you talk about in the terms of religion, organized religion. So that's what that is. It's kind of showing you that there are other alternative lifestyles that are not that bad. It's kind of like putting a pin in the grenade of the programming we've always had from the church. These are evil and that's it. right? So people that are gay are evil, get rid of them. Like that's the programming that was 100 years ago. And so, and it still is in places in the world. But it's like we see the woke media putting a pin in that grenade. That's why Wicked, the evil witch, is not so bad. It's like that. It's that role. It's the traditional role of all this time. They were always telling you that these people that were living this lifestyle was bad, right? And so now they're walking it back. And I don't know the reasoning or if it's good or bad. I really don't care. Being in love is hard. And if you can find somebody to love you, no matter what the circumstances in, and you love them, then more power to you. Good on you. Go for it. Loving somebody is difficult. Finding love is difficult to do. So if you can find it, no matter what shape it takes, and nobody gets hurt, then you should go for it. Aside from kids, right? So yeah. I know we're touching on tough subjects here, and I know I'm dancing through raindrops right now, but I think you guys get what I mean. So I think a lot of the programming is kind of putting a pin in the program, the demonization that we've had all along for hundreds of years for certain ways of life. That's what I think that is.
I mean, completely trying to break the spectrum on things as far as, it seems like with a lot of the stuff that's been happening the last few years, like people are less trusting of the government, they're less trusting of this, they're less trusting of that. So I wonder if it's a matter of trying to make it so that people will start sympathizing with the people that they've seen as like the oppressors, and even expanding this into like a brighter aspect or a bigger aspect of things. I mean, if they've always kind of made like the extraterrestrials, all of these dark beings, whether you want to call them demons or angels, like whatever, all these different like beings, they've kind of made them this, like, you avoid them, like this is bad, blah, 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 blah. But it seems like we're kind of pushing towards this idea where I don't know if you get into like the more biblical aspect of things and whether or not these demons are actually aliens or if it's just a matter of language and everything. But it seems like these darker forces are starting to come into the world more now than they ever have before. So it almost seems like the intention behind all of this stuff, whether you believe it's demonic or extraterrestrial, whatever, might be a matter of when these enemies come, you'll start sympathizing with them like, oh, they're only trying to do this for our good. They're only trying to help us out. So then people will be a little bit more passive with things and not just see them as the straight enemy, but rather be like, all right, well, maybe there is some good intentions behind them. Like, it seems like it's a mind brainwashing for that.
It's very dangerous to see the media and the government and the school programs that school curriculum in the United States and in most of the free world is written by the U.S. Department of Defense. Did you know that?
Yep.
So the SCORM score, which is the benchmark for what it takes to be a high school graduate in the free world, not just the United States, but across Europe and everywhere else in the free world, is determined by the United States Department of Defense. And it's really concerning to see them pacifying the military, the soldiers. So, you think about people in boot camp, soldiers in boot camp, they get a stress card. And if their sergeant yells at them, they can hold their stress card and go and have an emotional time off.
Are you for real? They're really doing that now?
Yeah, that's a real thing. Look it up. My buddy was 17 years in the Army. He was a sergeant or just under a sergeant. He, in the boot camp, he trained soldiers. And he said the minute they introduced stress cards that he couldn't yell at his soldiers, they could hold a card up and he had to shut up his cadets.
What happens when they're in a war situation at that point and there's something actually happening and they're screaming at him? Like, what do you?
He said he tenured his resignation. He said, this isn't an army anymore. You know what I mean? Like, it reduces the lethality. And when you see people being trained to be passive and just take their punishment and forgive, it's very dangerous. It's a very dangerous thing. People are being taught. Look at the doubt. Like recently, let's talk about politics for a second. Look at the corruption that the Department of Government Efficiency has uncovered. It's absolutely mortifying. And I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. I really don't. But if you look at that, there are people that look at that and they're mad at Musk. How can you be mad at somebody that's saving you? You're $30 trillion in debt. Your kids and your kids' kids are going to pay that back. And we're on the verge of bankruptcy, the entire dollar collapsing. And they're trying to do something about it. And politically, they're programmed. People are programmed to believe that something bad is happening to them.
They're killing the messenger. That's what's happening right now. The guy's not even...
Well, I'm saying that's the level of programming that people... Do you see what I'm saying? Like, they're like, no, let them keep stealing from us. Like, do you think about how it doesn't serve yourself? And, I mean, that's where we're at today, the level of programming. And they passed it in the Obama... I think it was the Obama administration when they passed it and said the CIA could use the propaganda weapons that it uses against other countries on the United States. And that's what we've seen happen. And they go after the kids and the susceptible chunks of society that feel like they're victimized, and they give them a rally cry and a band together with these people. You're being victimized and these are being victimized. You need to fight these guys. And they jump right to it. They snap to because they are victimized. So there are people that have a bone to pick and they just feed it. And it's really scary to see, man. It really is, because people are lining up for their own destruction, ultimately.
It's Maoism. It's splitting of the generations, because that's like one of the first things that you have to do is you have to separate the older generation from the younger generation so they don't rally up. So it's the same thing that's happening now. And that's why everybody, hates the Gen X. They hate the boomers. They hate the millennials. Gen Z is kind of riding by themselves with the Generation Alpha, because they were the generation that got split from the previous ideology. And what happened with like Maoism was essentially that people started reporting their own parents for things because they didn't align with their values, which, I mean, in a weird way now is kind of happening. It's just in a different sense that, if somebody isn't being eco-friendly or they're not getting with the woke agenda views on things, people will like report their parents now for one doing this bad thing, or for one saying, I don't believe in this ideology or something like that. Like it's not as far down the line as it was happening back in China, but like we're on that path of the separation.
And also it happened in Germany. So the Nazis rose to power because the gender bending, the ideology of gender bending was being pushed on them prevalent. The book burnings, they were burning books about gender.
Weimar Republic, for anybody that hasn't dived into that is a weird rabbit hole to get into.
So we're seeing the same thing happen. We're seeing the rise of a really hawkish conservative right in response to the ridiculous, insane, self-destructive policies instituted by the left. And so we see this, and it's like, it makes you wonder if that was the plan, to make people open their arms to the hawkish right to do these things. The State of the Union address the other night, I watched it and I thought, man, they kind of went hard on the kids. It was really brutal the way that it does, and I support putting us back to how we were. The United States worked great for a long time. There's no need. It wasn't broke. You didn't need to fix it. But recently in the last 20, 30 years, it's like it went off the deep end. But I think that the left did such a bad job that it made everybody rally around the right, and now they're accepting hawkish changes that are also may not be entirely healthy. Like, this is exactly what Germany did prior to when Hitler came in and turned around the economy. That was so, you look at what he did, and everybody followed everything he said. And I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer here. I'm just saying, I'm just pointing out, connecting the dots of history, that we're seeing the same thing play out again. And so, I don't know. I just want to leave it at that. I don't want to be, I'm an optimist, and I always like to think that everything's going to work out. We're going to have a great time. The United States is going to do well, and the rest of the world is going to do well. And we're going to get a disclosure soon, with ETs, and join basically a Star Trek existence in the universe, and have advanced technology and knowledge, which people sorely need. I think people, once there is a disclosure and the average layman's common man understands what else is up there, it will give people inspiration to aspire to behave better. Right now, we don't have inspiration. We really don't, because we just see, what do you got? Movie stars and sports, basketball guys. There's not a lot of inspiration out there. But once we learn that there's entire societies of advanced beings with advanced technology, we'll be inspired to behave better. And that's my what's the word? Naive hope. I hope that works out. Knowledge of the stars and being among the stars, I think, is part of being a man, humankind. And once it happens, I think people will just automatically be inspired to be better.
I definitely agree with that, because I think that it's one of those things that on Earth we feel like we've explored most things that are able to be explored without needing some type of crazy advanced technology, such as going into the ocean, stuff like that. But the human spirit naturally has this intuition to want to explore, to want to discover, to want to figure things out. And what happens when you feel like nobody has anything new to explore? Everybody is just basically stuck in this area, and they just end up arguing with each other because there's no new things for them to venture into.
There's no real meat on the bone anymore. There's nothing to sink your teeth into, right? You're not going to be the richest, the fastest, the strongest, the best looking. You're just not going to do that. So people are like, I'll just be mediocre.
Exactly. And I think that's what's happening now, even with like the left and the right. I mean, not to get too far into the political part again, and we can kind of side tangent away from something else into something else, because I have another couple questions for you. But I mean, as far as like the political spectrum goes now, it kind of feels like, you have the extreme left and you have the extreme right. And it seems like the majority of people are in the center. They're just more lean towards the right, at least now with ideology wise. But the problem is everybody gets grouped that if you're right-leaning, that means you're all the way far to the right. And nobody really wants to understand that there's this middle ground. But honestly, I think that there's a lot more people in the middle than there are on either the left or the right side. And just due to all this intentional conflict, because of course you have to create chaos in order to try to get power and control over everybody. As soon as people realize that everybody's kind of in the middle and has kind of the same ideology with things, where nobody cares what you do with your own personal life when you're an adult, just keep it away from the kids. That's a pretty general, obvious rule for anybody. It doesn't matter what you are. Pretty simple. And once people start realizing that, again, it's not that anybody is that crazy far into the other side. It's just the extremes on both sides that are ruining it for everybody. Because even the people that are slightly to the right, they're looking at the extreme left, and even the people that are slightly to the left, they're looking at the extreme right, not realizing how close their ideology actually is in the middle. Well, but again, once we start seeing space, seeing this advanced technology, and people can start exploring out again, I think people will start conflicting less with each other and realize that there's this middle ground because they'll have somewhere else to focus on again.
They've made this culture of hating people. Mm-hmm. Complete strangers. They made a culture successfully of hating people that are complete strangers for something they may believe, which in itself is an un-American tenet. Like, America was founded on the ability to believe and say whatever you choose freely so that there could be discourse. And that's what's being attacked the most right now is you can't wear a MAGA hat and you can't wear a rainbow sticker or people will hate you. You get what I'm saying? Like, on both sides. And so there's this intense, like, that's the only message you really need to look at. If your political influence is trying to tell you to hate somebody, then it's wrong. It's that simple. And like you said, most people are in the middle. Most people don't give a crap about what other people do. They're just worried about making handling their own business. I think that's 99% of everybody. But the people that are subscribing and saying, hating them is a great idea. I hate, you know what I mean? He reminds me of that other guy I hate. And so those people are prevalent, and they're giving them the microphone. And, there's an artificial thing going on. And so it's just dangerous. Any movement, political, religious, or otherwise, that tells you to hate people that you've never met is probably false.
I definitely agree with that because, I mean, honestly, even going back into these religions, at the end of the day, the whole idea behind them before people started getting control and corruption, all these things, was to treat everybody well, love everybody. And even if you're not following a religion, I mean, it's pretty good general rules to live by, that as long as somebody isn't hurting anybody else, like, let them do them, like, who cares? But on the other side of that too, it's like also the fact that people need to understand to have a little bit tougher skin, because on both sides, it's like, if you believe in freedom of speech, you should believe in it all the way around, in the aspect of, like, you should be able to say what you feel you want to say to others, but in the turn, they should be able to say what they feel like they want to say to you. But the hard part comes into how people say those things, because there's always two ways of saying things. And either one, you can have an honest debate trying to get to the center of what you want, or you can just get into that hate-filled aspect where you're just spouting insults at each other. But it's so hard for people to get to that point because they just... Again, like you said, we're just geared to this society to hate. Like, they don't want people to sit down and have these rational conversations, because then, again, people would realize how close their ideology is, even if they are on opposite sides of the political spectrum, Once
we lose the ability to express our opinions, it's over. It's all over. Once we lose that ability, big tech did it to us in 2020. A lot of people got silenced. A lot of platforms tried to come out. They got silenced. And we roared back, and now we can. Thank God for some of the people that restored freedom of speech to where you can say things. But we live in a world where everything is recorded now. And so something you said when you were a adolescent, like, thank God I'm of the generation that you guys didn't see the kind of idiot I was in my late teens and early 20s. And I don't have to live that down because I did some very profoundly stupid things and said some very profoundly stupid things because you get cliquey. You're not around. You haven't been around the block. I haven't met that many people. I didn't know many people. And I went by what I was heard, and I went by people that were telling me to hate people. Right. So that's the lesson I learned. But nowadays, kids don't have that freedom. Everything they say is recorded and repeated and put back and broadcast back at them. And so we live in a different world right now as far as that goes. And it's a shame on some regard. But once we lose the freedom of speech, when you look at what's going on in England right now, the UK is basically fallen in many ways. It's funny because I'm going there later this year, so I have to watch what I'm saying because they have AI scrubbers that will listen to this show, that will scrub this show and say he said something negative about freedom of speech in the UK, and I can go to jail when I visit there. So, you know what I mean? Like, that's the reality of the world. So we're on one hand, we have to fight for freedom of speech, but on the other hand, we have to be responsible and teach our kids to be careful with what they say and where they say it. And it's just sad that's the world we live in. We enjoyed freedom of speech for a long time in the United States, and we took it for granted. And now we have to tighten it up no matter what we are, because we're being listened to. Your iPhone's taking your picture every 5 seconds, even when it's off. Even when it's turned off, there's an infrared picture it takes. And you know what? If you use the infrared camera, like I got a Chevy, the dashboard is taking the picture every 5 seconds too. It's the same thing.
Same as Samsung TVs too. They have a thing when you sign up for Samsung TV that it takes pictures of the room.
Wow. Yeah. So that's what's going on. And big tech, was able to lobby and get and it's not big tech, it's probably military that's doing that. They want to listen to everybody. It's the Big Brother thing coming true.
Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back with that deep conversation you crave. But just a quick reminder, if you'd like to snag some gear for this show, Bizarre Encounters, or your favorite creature or topic, hop on over to the Open Minds Media merch store for a wide range of designs with new drops regularly. Welcome back to the show, and let's dive right in.
When I look back at my time in space on the Ceres Colony Corporation, it was a totalitarian government. And there were cameras everywhere, and they could watch you, and everybody had brain implants, and they could call up what you did for the last 6 months and get a report on you. And it was like that. And it was not so great of an existence as what we have when we have freedom. Also, there was no crime. So, you got to take your pick, choose your poison. On one hand, you don't have freedom to do anything, but on the other hand, neither does anybody else. So there's no crime, like all the crime gets squashed. Technology is going in that direction. They could probably solve a lot of crimes right now if we didn't have the Constitution. If they really tried, they know where everybody's at. Your cell phone's listening and watching, and it has your location and probably 10 other things we don't know about on times everybody. So when something comes up missing, I'm sure now a computer could solve most of the crimes, but they don't.
Or even trying to guess future crimes from the type of stuff people post or anything like that. But
the Minority Report thing, get him before he gets it. Yeah,
dude. But I think that it's a matter of right now, especially we're in this weird time where when it comes to taking freedoms away, you can't directly try to take freedoms away. Otherwise, people start becoming aware of it. And I've kind of noticed this weird shift that there's been this push, like you were talking about, with freedom of speech, where people are starting to expand back into freedom of speech again. But I think it's because their original intention for repression didn't work because people became aware of it. And one thing that I'm starting to notice now is that when I'll be middle of the night, I'm sitting there on my phone, death scrolling and stuff, I'll start getting to this point where there'll start being all these messed up videos of decapitation videos or murder videos or all this stuff that used to be on the weird websites and everything back in the early 2000s. And I'm kind of wondering if it's a ploy to basically all right, you want your freedom of speech, we're going to unleash the floodgates. So it's going to get to a point where people are going to say, all right, I don't want to see this anymore. And they're going to start giving up their freedom of speech with the intention that they don't want to see this anymore. Like, the original game didn't work, so they're switching the aspect. So to anybody out there seeing that stuff, like, hold tight and don't start flagging those videos, because otherwise you're doing exactly what they want you to. They want you to beg for them to take that stuff away.
Right. Well, it's true. As soon as, remember when Facebook came out, and it's funny because we're talking about completely different stuff than my books. You know what I mean? It's just turned into a fun conversation.
We'll bring it back in a minute.
When Facebook came out and said, we got rid of the fact checkers. Remember? It was a few months ago. Mm-hmm. And Zuckerberg went on, he said, we got to restore freedom of speech. The next day, I had nothing but flat earth in my feed. And I report them all. I said, I don't want to see this. False information. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. And it was just throwing me flat earth forever and ever. For like a month. All through my feed, it was nothing but flat earth propaganda. And I would flag it. I would say, look, you know what I mean? Like, if the algorithm really fed you what you wanted to see, if you like something and it feeds it, I never liked any of it. In fact, I reported them and said I don't closed it. I don't want to see it in my feed. I don't want to see any flat earth crap. And it was feeding it to me. It was forcing it down. You know, I'm like, okay, we're not going to fact check. We're going to give you nothing but lies then. We're going to just bury you in lies. And so there is a real psychology to the apps that is above and beyond what people think it is. Your Instagram, your Facebook, your YouTube, all of those, they have a psychology. It's very advanced. There's an algorithm and an artificial intelligence that is feeding our kids. If you go on, Shayn, and say you're a 35-year-old man on your brand new YouTube with your brand new phone and your brand new email account, it's going to feed you a few videos to see what you like to see. And if you go on and say you're a 13-year-old girl, it's going to feed you completely different videos. And they're not good for you. They're not. It's not because you're going to get clicks. They're going to, at first they send you gross stuff. You notice that? The first round of videos is like super disgusting stuff you have to turn off.
Yeah, usually as a guy, you get a bunch of like it's like a lot of pornography type stuff, especially like I've noticed that when I make a new account on Instagram, for example, when I made my different pages for my multiple shows, when I just had the account blank and I wasn't following anybody, just seeing that I was like, you know, a 30-something-year-old white male, you get a lot of pornography. Like, it's trying to push you towards that type of stuff.
Well, you get that. You'll scroll through a bunch of beautiful women that are like clearly being suggestive, and then all of a sudden you'll get something gory.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly what it is.
In your mind, you get into shock. You're like, what? Because on one hand, you're going into that reptile brain of sexuality. And you get what I'm saying? Like, that's being stimulated by the dopamine. It's a reptile brain. It's a lower brain function. And then all of a sudden they hit you with gore, somebody being brutally murdered or worse. And then you know what I'm saying? Like, it programs you. It's changing you. It changes your sexuality.
It's like that trauma bonding type thing where you'll hear about a lot of this stuff with like the MK Ultra program and with like a lot of people that were brought up in like in trafficking and stuff, that they'll do this thing where they'll start correlating sexuality with like gore, and they start trying to combine the two and mess it up in your head where you start combining the two together.
Yes. Well, and the other thing is when you look at the violence that's on all of the media. So back in the 80s, it was all spandex and TNA. You know what I mean? Like, it was all girls and it was like very suggestive sexually. Nowadays, it's gore. Like, really, on almost every platform, when you put on almost every show, even if it's a sitcom, it's like they're in the office and all of a sudden somebody gets shot in the head. You know what I mean? It's like murder everywhere.
I mean, true crime is the thing now. Documentaries, podcasts, like, everybody wants to hear the most outrageous, violent true crime stories. Like, that is weirdly what the public is into right now.
The net result of that on a young male mind, the net result of being exposed to repeated violence, images, and gore is a feeling of helplessness. That's the psychological residue, a feeling of helplessness. I read that somewhere from the Stanford Research Institute. So what they're doing, and it's no coincidence you have all these kids that are 25 and 28 years old living in their parents' basement because they feel helpless. They've been bombarded with these things. What difference is I can't beat people up like that. I'm not a murderer. The world's dangerous. I'm going to stay home.
It's emasculating the males.
Yes, that's exactly what's going on. Yep. So they're feeding that in. So we're seeing, whatever. I don't want to get in. I don't want to keep. I feel like I'm preachy, so I just want to quit that. We'll go back to. Let's change the subject.
Well, okay, so bring back in something that I kind of wanted to bring back with the 20 and back. So, at least from my experience of people that I've talked to, and you can kind of fill in some more information on the gaps on this one, it seems like the majority of people kind of get split into two groups. You have one, the people that get brought into the military aspect of things, and then the other half that get brought into like the labor/engineering aspect of things. And I've noticed with a lot of the people that I've talked to that have gone through the military aspect of things, that they'll kind of have this weird thing that'll happen where, you know, they'll have the 20 and back experience. They'll have these weird traumatic memories that'll like lock into their head from experiences they went through when they were doing, you know, their military campaigns. And then when they come back, they end up joining the military again when they get older. And particularly coming from like one or two people I talked to, they talked about how they'd have these weird scenarios where they would almost try to like line stuff up where, you know, something that happened to you when you're doing your 20 and back, they'll have something that's a very, very close scenario that'll happen to you in this normal life, where it'll start kind of like blending the two together. And I know that you kind of went through more of like the engineering aspect of things, so it's probably a little bit different with the programming / trying to repress some of these memories with the military people. But have you noticed anything like this happening in your life, or have you talked to anybody else that has mentioned experiences like this where they almost try to like layer them so that you kind of blend them both together?
I don't no, not in me personally, and a lot of the older guys. So, you know, it seems to be a different experience for people that were abducted into the programs in the 80s versus the 90s, mid 90s. Seems like a completely different experience. But I think they gave me a post-hypnotic suggestion, like a programming to not join the military. It was just something that I will always, you know, I was like, man, I kind of was into it, but I just had this like voice telling me never to join the military in my head. And I think to not spur me to remember, but they really got their act together. A lot of people that were in the programs in the early 80s get their memories back. And a lot of people that were in the 90s and mid 90s don't get many memories back. And so that shows me that they got better at it, at the process of erasing you. So, you know, on the back end of that, they got better as time went on. So they were bungling in the first years, you know, 70s and 80s, and a lot of people get memories back. So I don't know if that helps with that.
Do you think that the phenomenon is still continuing on now to the point where it's gotten so advanced that, you know, if you were mentioning that people in the 80s were actually partially remembering stuff, people in the 90s really don't, maybe some kind of do you think that it's still continued on to this current day where they've gotten to a point now where people will go through these experiences and not remember any of them whatsoever? Because it seems like there's also been this other thing that people have been kind of talking about where people talk about like astral projection experiences and almost feeling like they were going through like training during these like astral projection experiences. I'm kind of wondering if there might be like a correlation with that they've maybe kind of shifted the phenomenon or they're using it potentially in a different way. But even with like the astral travel stuff, and I'm sure that you could probably bring something into this, and you've probably had some people who have experienced something like this, but people, myself included, actually grew up with these experiences of being pulled into these astral travel things where you'd go through like obstacle courses, or you'd go through this, or you go through that. And then all of a sudden you just hit this point where all of a sudden you don't remember anything. You don't remember your dreams at all. And you end up going in these like 10-year gaps where you don't remember one single dream. Like, do you think this might be a continuation of the phenomenon? I mean, you said that you've kind of gotten into the astral stuff. So I feel like there might be a tie with all of this.
So people that strictly have astral memories, I want to pick my words carefully here because there may be some watching, and I don't want to misstep what I'm about to say. There are a lot of people that look at whistleblowers and want the attention of it, and people want something to happen. Most people that are taken into these programs have no memory of it. Like seriously, none, zero. And then while they're dreaming, their subconscious mind does have the access to the memories and sorts it out. So they may feel that it's an astral aspect, but it may be something that's actually real. A lot of them feel that they're taken in real time and they're taken tonight and going in. And I just have a hard time getting my head around that. Like, hey, we were on a mission last night. Shayn, me and you were on a mission last night. We were battling bugs on another planet in Andromeda. And then we woke up today. It was over. We'll go on a mission tonight. And I'm like, Make that make sense to me. How does that work? And why would you need somebody's dreaming to do that? Why wouldn't you just come down and hire somebody to do it? So, you know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. So there's some of that doesn't make sense to me. I think more than likely is people are revisiting old memories. Like they're actually taken and live through it. Maybe past life, maybe current ones, maybe a 20 and back abduction, and that your subconscious is trying to sort it out. But people that are like, I was in a war last night and I was on Mars last night and then they put me back. Make that make sense. Like why would they go through the trouble of getting somebody, a 7-Eleven clerk from Detroit, to go up and do that and then put you back? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to be insulting. I don't want to be demeaning or condescending. But a lot of testimonies that are coming forward right nowadays, I really just can't get my head around. It doesn't make any sense. There has to be some evidence if you're going to stand in front of 10,000 people and say that there's a secret space program. You have to have something that you can present as evidence more than a QHHT session. And so we really saw a lot of people, a lot of fakes come out in the last 5 years and dilute the subject matter greatly. So there are people that were all of a sudden were on every show in the world and on CNN, and all these people came out of the woodwork and they went right to the front row. And their stories, when you're somebody that's been in the 20 and back and been up there, you can look at their story and go, this guy's full of crap. And we had a bunch of these people come up, and they came through, and then so it's fragmented. We've got Montauk. Anybody that's been into Montauk technology, it's hard to make heads or tails of it. They plug them in that chair. They're living other lifetimes, other timelines. They come back. It's not a coherent story. I'm not saying that anything happened, but I'm saying you got to give me something. Otherwise, you just got to stay researching your own stuff. And I know that I must sound like a jerk to some people right now, but the reality is the burden of proof is on any whistleblower. You are not talking to people that believe you automatically. You need to talk to the masses that don't believe any of this and convince them of your story. If you can't stand up and present something for that, then you need to get to work on it. And if you were on another world in the astral, in the high-tech, in a space program using lasers, fighting bugs in a war, I want to hear about some of the technology. You need to be working on recreating that technology. We are the ones that have to disclose. So a lot of people that are very real, that are genuine in these programs, are working on technology, including myself. And it shouldn't be that hard to do. But people that say that they've been up there for 40 years and they come back and they got nothing, you can't even tell me how you guys cooked your food, that it was a magical thing. You can't tell me how your clothes were folded, or what if there was a machine that did that. What are you working on? What technology are you reverse engineering to make it better for yourself financially and for the world physically? And so this is one of the things I'm looking for, because the reality is we're 8 feet deep in fakes right at this point in the conversation. We are 8 feet deep. And so we are sinking. The real testimonies are being sunk behind a bunch of fake testimonies of people that were riding dragons with lightsabers. So it was just bullshit.
No, I definitely agree with you there, because I definitely think that if there's anything that people are starting to become aware of or starting to catch on to, that no matter what, you're going to have people that are going to muddy the water. And I mean, call it a psyop, call it what you're going to call it. But, if there's too many people coming out and bringing something up, you're going to have somebody that comes out and starts trying to make, the whole concept to look a little bit ridiculous. So, if you have somebody that comes out and starts talking about these exact experiences, and they have all these like correlations of things that'll start evening up, you have to have somebody that comes out and throws something out there that's so ridiculous that people will start associating the two with each other. Because it seems like the whole 20 and back phenomenon, like I said, I've talked to a handful of you guys that, with no doubt in my mind, like you guys went through something. But in general, even within the UFO phenomenon, you talk about 20 and backs, and there's a good portion of even UFO researchers that don't want to believe in it, just because the waters have been muddied so much. And I mean, even kind of throwing in some other aspect to the more astral stuff. I mean, as you mentioned earlier, like there's a lot of different beings out there. There's a lot of different races, a lot of different things. So maybe the idea is the same with the aspect of like taking somebody for whatever purpose it might be, but the technology, the intentions, the motivation, the species doing it could be completely different. So, I mean, either one, there's no connection at all whatsoever with the astral stuff and the 20 and backs, or on the other side, maybe it's the same concept of technology being used by two different races. I don't necessarily think maybe that they're directly tied, but I don't know, maybe there's a little bit of something to it. But even on the other side too, there might be this intentional idea of muddying the water, whether it's coming from the human side or the extraterrestrial side, that maybe they'll purposely pick some random people just to kind of throw some weird ones out there. So when people start coming out and talking about this stuff, you have one guy that, like you said, is talking about riding dinosaurs and fighting people with lightsabers. And that one guy is going to fuck it up for the other 10 that have exact information, everything to back it all up. But because this one guy's claims are so ridiculous, nobody else believes the other 10.
That's right. And there are shows out there that are fake. There are conferences where they put you on stage with these guys, and you know what I'm saying? They surround you with the idiots, and then so your testimony gets buried in nonsense. I want to say that most of the people that come forward, I feel something happened. I feel that they may have participated. I think that a lot of people have legitimate memories, and they go, this is my chance. I want to share, and I want to get the attention. I'm going to get on stage. I'm going to share my story. It's worked out for Tony or these other people that have told their story. It's worked out for them. I'm going to get up there and do that. And something did happen to them, but they don't have the whole story in their mind, and they didn't research and couldn't produce evidence. So they get on stage and they start connecting dots with fibs. And so I think that's more likely of an explanation than everybody being fake or disinfo or like some agent. And I think that a lot of people are just connecting the dots. They've got 15% of the memories back, and they're connecting the dots with the other 80% they're being asked about in a live audience, in front of a live audience. And I think there's a lot of that. And I wrestle with myself, man. I've always tried to, when somebody asks me something I didn't remember, to just say I don't know. And I was fortunate enough to have evidence turn up in the beginning that kept me going. So I have evidence around my testimony. Like I said, I went to Inukur and it's there. All this, and I called it out before I went there. The plane in Peru, I found it. It's there. It's exactly the one. Like I said, I called it out before it happened. The salt deposits on Ceres, I called those out before NASA announced them that they were salt. NASA said they were something else. So I had things I was just in that spot of timing. I was early on in the testimony. So people that come out now, they have a much bigger burden because everything's been talked about already. You know what I mean? It's hard for them to introduce new concepts and new technology because there have been quality whistleblowers have talked about everything already. So it's hard for them to prove their case.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And we are back to the show. Let's hop right in.
And so a lot of people are just taking the stage and they don't even care. There's no argument for the truth. There's no like, hey, look, this is why this happened and this is why I believe it's true. They just get up there and they're spewing this knee-deep story of stuff that doesn't make sense. And that's where the bar has been lowered to right now. And we see it. You want to know the net result? People are turning it off. The conferences are having a hard time selling tickets because half the people on stage are full of shit. Pardon my language on your show, but you know what I'm saying? That we're seeing that. We're seeing a bunch of stuff that is debatable, openly debatable on these conferences, and the ticket sales are down. And there's 1,000,001 conferences in the United States, so it's diluted. It's not what it used to be, where everybody went to a conference. And so the conferences in the last couple of years have really struggled with tickets. Only the ones that have the most integrity in their witnesses and what they're offering, the people that have the most integrity are the ones that draw crowds now. There's conferences I've been to where I was just being honored to be invited and went along, and I go there and there's like 10 people in the audience, and there's 30 people in the audience. 20 of them are speakers, and the 10 are the tickets that sold. You know what I mean? Like, and you look around and the quality of speakers is low. The quality of testimonies is low. There's people giving a story with no supportive evidence. I feel like I'm being hawkish on people, and I really don't want to be. I would say this: if something happened to you and you believe it, write it down, keep your journal, research it, talk to other people, and share your story. But be honest about it. Say if you don't know, if you don't know the answer, say you don't know the answer. Say, this is all I remember, and that's all I got. I hope what I do remember helps. But we have people that just are freestyling their story, and so That's the sad place of where we're at. And you know what? To a certain extent, I saw it coming. In order for them to disclose, they have to make stories like mine go away, where they did wrong to people. So they have to make it not mainstream in some way, or do it, but they have to control the narrative. So they dilute our, and then they've always made a joke of ufology all along for 50 years. They made everybody laugh at UFOs. The term UFO is laughable, so they renamed it UAP. They programmed you to laugh at UFO all the time. Somebody said, I saw a UFO last night. And you're like, yeah, right. Sure you did. Because you're programmed to think that from the National Enquirer being in the checkout line and being ridiculous. You just see it. But now they just rebranded it. So you're programmed to think UFO is bad, but not UAP. So, hey, we saw UAPs. Really? Tell me more. Because you're not programmed to laugh at that. You're not programmed to laugh at the UAP. You're programmed to laugh at UFO, but it's the exact same thing. It's the exact same verbiage. So,
see, I definitely think it's one of those things that people are scared to say, I don't know, because they don't want somebody to basically try to destroy their story after that certain point, or their experience after that certain point. I don't want to necessarily say story, but I think it's one of those things that if somebody has an honest experience that they've gone through and they want to get their experience and their story out, rather than trying to bring it directly out onto the stage, maybe start trying to talk to some other people that have been around it and can kind of, I guess, kind of help you bring some like validity to your story and kind of try to remember things a little bit more. Because if you throw yourself out on that stage and you have all these I don't knows, people aren't going to believe you. But on the other side, if you start piecing stuff together, the people that have been through the experience aren't going to believe you. So it's kind of a catch-22 on that. You're going to be damned if you do, damned if you don't. So if you just take the time to talk to somebody that's already in the field, already knows about these experiences, and kind of helps you kind of lay the groundwork in order to be able to present your story properly, I think that would be kind of like a good stepping off point for a lot of people where they wouldn't get stuck in that situation where they have to fill in the gaps or they have to say, I don't know. But honestly, like if you don't know, say you don't know, because that's how we can honestly start to fill in the gaps and really start to understand the research. And kind of bringing it back to what you were saying with the whole UAP thing, UFOs and everything, I'm kind of wondering if it's a matter of, with all this disclosure stuff that's been happening, with the congressional hearings, like everything that's been going on, it seems like the general public, there's a lot of people that are diehard into ufology and will always be, but it seems like they're almost intentionally trying to push away the average person that would be into this stuff, where they're going into other stuff. Kind of like what you were kind of saying. It almost kind of feels like they're trying to control the narrative, because if they are going to disclose, and they're only going to disclose what they want to disclose, because there's never going to be full disclosure. They're only going to disclose what they want you to know. The first step you'd have to do is try to get rid of the people that are going to give away too much of the information. So if you overexpose a subject to the point where nobody wants to hear about it anymore, then people are going to stop researching it, move into the next thing, and then at that point, again, you can control that full narrative, which I think is what this ploy is that they're trying to do right now. Because, you know, a lot of people have this argument saying that the government isn't that smart. They're not pulling off these grand conspiracies. Maybe not the general government. I mean, there's definitely some conspiracies that they pull off very loosely, not to get into the whole political side with all of that type of stuff, but on the other side, when you get into this UFO stuff, like there is nothing more heavily top secret in the U.S. government. Like if there was going to be one place that they'd be able to pull off all of these crazy operations, these psychological operations, like that would be their main focus that they're doing it on. So like for anybody that doesn't think that there's this whole grand psyop going on with the UFO community, like I think you're looking past the main point here. That if they're trying to overexpose it, there's got to be a reason for that.
Yeah, there's a level of government that doesn't make mistakes. There's a level of the military with it that everything that they want to happen happens. That hence the term military grade. So we have cars that are built to die around 150,000 miles. You know what I mean? Your transmission is built to fall apart. Your car is built to start dying. If they wanted your car to go 1 million miles and make other things, they could, and it wouldn't be that expensive. If they wanted a car to never rust, it's something they have to change the mix of the metal by like 4% of nickel, and they'll never rust. So we are used to things that are built to break. That's the public version. The military version, the people at the top of the government, they don't live in that world. They live where everything works. Everything works. Always. and they don't make mistakes. And people that make mistakes quickly get fired. And so there is a branch of government and a branch of military and a secret military that doesn't make mistakes. And other countries have them too. These are the people that are doing things behind the scenes. And then they want us to believe that government can't pull it off. Like it's the perfect disguise.
Act dumb, but you're actually the smart one. That's the typical thing. Like nobody will ask you questions or ever think that it's you if you're the one that plays stupid, even though you're actually the one that's moving around all the chess pieces.
Or they say the government could never do it. The government can't make it. They can't even fix the roads. They could never have a $1 trillion spaceship. That doesn't make any sense. Well, yes, they can fix the roads if they tried. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's the same with the space program. The secret space program is its own government now. It's its own thing. It's its own society. We're talking about millions of people that live with the knowledge, a compartmentalized knowledge is knowledge of different levels of technology and different levels of society that are in space, on the moon, on Mars, around Saturn, moons of Saturn, around Jupiter. Millions of people out there, out even farther on the moons. There are 200 some bodies in our solar system, and most of them are inhabited now with bases or a can or a base or something dug inside of it. And the planets are, we've been up there for going on 100 years now. And that's the big secret. And once they got into telling the secret, they have to tell a big lie to cover up the little one. And nobody wants to tell the truth because somebody's head's got to roll for that. And so who does it? It's musical chairs. They don't want the music to stop. So that's why disclosure hasn't happened. We're totally ready for disclosure, by the way. There may have been a time in the 50s if they disclosed that there would be pandemonium. But I think people right now are numb enough that they can handle any kind of news and not be upset by it.
I think that might actually alleviate some of the mental health at this point, because everybody knows like how bad the mental health is of the average person nowadays. Like if you told them, hey, wait, you're not trapped in this dome. The universe is way broader than you could ever imagine. I think that would do more good than more negative for the mentality of people. Maybe not for the religious minded, or, they maybe would kind of fit it into like their views and their paradigm, because honestly, when it comes to a lot of this stuff, I feel like we're all talking about the same stuff. It's just a matter of what interpretation or words people wanted to put on this particular thing. But at the end of the day, it's like, even the religious people, the people that some people are going to view them as extraterrestrials. Some people are going to view them as angels. Some people are going to view them as jinns. Some are going to view them as demons. Like, I don't think it's going to change the religious viewpoints of the world, but rather that it's going to bring more validity to each of those individual groups, because then they're going to say, all right, this is the character that fits into this profile that we've been talking about forever.
So the ops are easy to recognize now. When you talk about the disinformation, it's easy to recognize. They all have the same common denominator. Don't look up. It's a simulation. There's no sky. Don't look up. It's flat. There's no sky. It's a dome. Don't look up. They're demons. Don't look up. They all have the same goal. Do not look up. But the reality is you can buy your own telescope, look with your own eyes without a screen, and you can make damn sure it's not a dome. You can tell with parallax how far nebulas and planets are away from the Earth, and there's no way they could rotate the way they do in the stars. Once you get a basic astronomy knowledge, there's absolutely no way it's flat and that it's a dome up there, and that when you really look at all the stars with a telescope, and you move from seeing 3,000 stars in the night to 100,000 stars in the night when you have an 8-inch telescope, then you see, and then you think of 7 out of 10 of those having an Earth, or each one of them having 200 bodies around them. The math just doesn't suggest that we're alone. And also, I love the people that say, oh, the ETs are demons. So 400 billion stars and 400 billion galaxies that we can see with our telescopes, and they're all demons, just us. We're the only cool ones. And then you've got other people like the Stephen Greer, who I admire and respect for the amount of work he's done. But his narrative is completely false, where he says 400 billion stars, 400 billion galaxies, we're the only evil ones. All the ones that can travel in space are good and benevolent. That's extremely absurd to suggest that. It's absolutely absurd. Nature extends beyond the sky. We as humans are part of nature. The way we interact with each other is natural, and it's a way of nature. And there are humans out here that will walk up to you in the street and give you a hug, and you can ask for $1, they'll give you $1. There are humans that will walk up to you and kill you and take your life for your hat. And that's what it's like up there. Nature extends beyond the sky. Circumstances are random in nature. People are random in their behavior according to what they live through. Animals are random. We have a blueprint of what the universe is like in the wilderness. Nature extends beyond the sky, and that's exactly what's up there. So the only thing that's missing on Earth is that we don't have higher forms of consciousness that we have contact with on the Earth. Like, we humans are the top of the food chain, of the mental food chain here, arguably. But in the universe, there are very advanced beings that are up there. So we were aware of it in the secret space program, and we interacted with them sometimes. But there are more advanced races. There are beings that live for thousands of years. There are beings that are telepathic and not speech oriented, and they can. Some of them are barely telepathic, and they can tell you it's hot or cold or have a conversation. And some of them are incredibly telepathic and very advanced, and they can download your entire life in a few moments and look at everything you ever did in your whole life telepathically in a short time, because they have that kind of capacity conscious-wise. And there are other things in nature that have consciousness that we never understand what they are. The Earth is conscious. That's what's missing in our blueprint of nature down here, is we don't have beings that are smarter than us, at least in the open.
So I guess before we start wrapping up completely, there's this concept that I've been really, really fascinated with, and maybe you could bring something into it, and this can be kind of what we wrap up on, because I have a lot of other stuff that I want to get into with you, and maybe we can come back for another round, because we've kind of retouched base on this one, and I don't want to open up a whole other 2-hour can of worms. So,
dude, we just got into a great convo about a ton of stuff that had nothing to do with my testimony, so it was cool. It was fun.
Say, we can definitely get into your books next time. We'll set something up, man, because I got a couple other things I definitely want to get into with you, but before we start wrapping up completely, just this concept. So, I'm assuming that you are somewhat familiar with Star Trek, right?
Yeah, I'm a Trekkie, man. I used to love it. It was like, I was drawn to it before I got my memories back.
Well, perfect. So the whole concept of, like, I'm sure you're familiar with, like, the Archons, or basically they talk about this whole concept that basically advanced intelligent life will progress to a point where we basically expand past needing to use physical vessels, and we become more of these, like, energetic beings. And there's a lot of different references to a lot of races like this in Star Trek, but the main one that they usually refer to are the Archons. And once the Archons get to that point, I don't know what reality placement that they kind of exist in, but it almost seems like, at least the way they represent them in that show, they can almost, like, manipulate physical matter because there's something above that. From your experiences with the 20 and backs and everything, and I know there's a lot of conspiracies behind Star Trek and where he was getting a lot of the inspiration to write some of this stuff, but have you had any experience with there being entities that are kind of what they describe with, like, the Archons, or basically species advancing to a point past needing, like, a physical body anymore?
Yes. In the mission briefings and in water cooler talk when I was on Sirius Colony and when I was a cargo engineer, the mission briefings did touch on the fact that there is a technological ceiling. So in the universe, right now, we can build technology at a small level, make a computer chip. It gets smaller and smaller. The distance between us and the Planck distance is very big. So the smallest measurement in the universe to human size is the size, it's like human size to the known universe worth of size that we can shrink down. So technology, when you shrink it more and more, you can do more things in technology. They knew that there was a ceiling of things that technology can do, and it becomes consciousness after that. So as much as a third of matter is made of consciousness or has a form of consciousness in it. And you can evolve to a point. There were beings that they were fully aware of that did not use spaceships. They did not need food. They could turn a banana into an apple, or, they could turn a chunk of something into something else mentally, but just by using their consciousness, they could map it in their head and rearrange the molecules on a level. So there are beings that interact like that. They speak to the universe itself and they get an answer. Like we pray to God, we don't get a direct answer. These beings do. They would speak to the larger universe and get an answer. And so that's just a form of evolution. It's just the same way that we And then you look at them in the Archons in Star Trek, they were always bad. They were always doing something bad. Remember? To Captain Kirk or whoever it was, whichever Star Trek you're talking about. But they were always like toying with them. Remember? They would make them, I'm Tweedledee, I'm Tweedledee. Remember that episode?
Yep.
These guys were gods and they were like torturing them. But it's the same thing we do to bugs and chickens and squirrels and things. We aren't always kind to lesser life forms than us, right? It's the same thing. So they're as far ahead of us as we are the anthill or the termites or the spider in your room. You see a spider, it's dead on sight. People pretty much agree they don't want spiders around. Well, the spider didn't do anything to you necessarily. This is alive. And these beings might look at us the same way that we look at a spider or a chicken or a squirrel. Most people are worried about why aren't the ETs coming down here and giving us free shit? And then you watch the squirrel outside your window starve to death and freeze to death. You're not doing anything for the squirrel. Why would the ET do anything for you? Why should something that is advanced stop what it's doing and come down here and do anything for you? Did you give your squirrel outside anything? Right? So it's the same kind of logic. Like we're in that trough of programming where we think we're entitled, that the ETs need to come down here and give us our med beds because they exist, and that's it. We get free stuff. What logic does that happen? That we have to go give? You can fix the squirrel, the stray cat. Does everybody owe a stray cat a trip to the veterinarian? Right. So what I'm saying is we are looking up the food chain, the consciousness level. We're not looking down and judging ourselves too. So we have to figure it out for ourselves and do our own things. And that mentality, I know, is not popular when I talk about it publicly, but it's the damn truth.
I mean, even kind of bringing it back to another metaphor from Star Trek. Do you remember from the original series the episode where there was a human who had crashed at some point on a planet that had the Archons, and they basically taught him how to manipulate reality like an Archon, and then later on he ends up coming on the ship. And basically, he's unlivable with anybody on the ship. Like, his powers, his ideas, everything are too advanced. Like, nobody wants him around. Right. Nobody can deal with him. They're like, no, we can't have him here. This guy is too much. So, I mean, talking about some programming that, they lay some stuff out like that, almost showing that, even if they gave the technology to one particular person, that one particular person would completely get shunned by the rest of society because they wouldn't be able to handle that section or that person anymore. I mean, even if you bring that down to a bigger scale, that they give this ideas or these technologies or this advancement to this specific group of people, what ends up happening? They end up isolating themselves from the rest of everybody else because now they feel like they're above everybody else. So the only intention for them giving this technology would simply be for their own amusement, one, or two, to see what the end result of the experiment would be. I don't see any other reason other than that. It's almost like the same way that you kind of talked about that we treat animals. It's like, yes, you may give this one particular animal special treats, but the whole reason for that is because, one, you're experimenting on it to, see what it'll do. You'll see if it'll become a companion of you. You'll see if it'll become loyal to you. There's a second motivation to it. You're not just giving it this just because you want to. There's something else to it,
I use the animal thing. I use the animal analogy loosely, right? So nature, basically, we have a blueprint for the way the universe works when we look down at nature and study it below us. But the thing is, we don't have a blueprint for nature that's above us. Things that are more advanced than us because they all got out of here a while ago, or at least if they're here ruling us, which they probably are, more advanced consciousness or more advanced life forms that may live longer. There may be people among us that are eternals that are running things. We don't know. But we're not privy to the knowledge of them. Otherwise, we might aspire to be more like them and start doing things differently. So set ourselves free. The truth shall set you free, kind of thing. But I know it's tough for a lot of people. And the other thing is, when you talk about ETs giving us technology, it's like we should have had it a long time ago. Our elite or somebody has stolen it from us. We've been kept in the dark for so long. We should have a Star Trek existence by now. We do have the technology to solve many of our problems. The fact is, we've just been ripped off the whole time. It's just been a big larceny upon mankind, is why we are not in a disclosure world right now. So maybe it's ETs that are doing it. Maybe it's our own leaders. Maybe it's satanic Luciferian society. Who knows? But the reality is that we're all ready for disclosure. We're ready to move on and go to the next level, and people, it'll happen quick. Once people see what is working for other species and what really is out there, people will abandon their own bad habits quick. And, not everybody, but I think a lot of people are going to aspire. If you live in a town where everybody's active and going to the gym, I'm willing to bet you're going to find your way to the gym eventually, So it's a monkey see, monkey do. And right now we don't see anything better than what we are right now. And the reality is there are many worlds out there that are more advanced, many species, many life forms that are very highly advanced compared to us. And once we see how they behave, we will begin to conduct ourselves like that. So that's my hope for a post-disclosure.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And we are back to the show. Let's hop right in. Say maybe it's also partially an intention that maybe they gave these to a specific group, and part of not our disclosure, but like their disclosure of themselves is they purposely gave this to this group that they knew would potentially isolate themselves. And they know that the correct time to show themselves to everybody is when that group learns how to spread everything to everybody else. Like, I know this sounds like a weird analogy for things, but maybe like their version of disclosure is when the elite group learns how to be part of everybody else. And the whole intention this whole time was that they gave them that group, they gave them that technology, hoping that they would eventually get to a point where they would want everybody to be on the same level. And we just haven't reached that yet because we're still within that development of the human mind where corruption is still possible. So they're waiting until we get to the point where we start actually thinking as a whole and there isn't the corrupt ones. So they intentionally give the corrupt ones the technology, waiting for them to become uncorrupt.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a little bit out of my range. How that might have worked out.
Because it seems like with a lot of these races, I don't want to say they're like hive mind, but it seems like all of them kind of have like a general understanding. I mean, not coming from somebody who's obviously had like contact with these guys, being able to sit down and have a conversation with them and ask them like what their hierarchy is, but it doesn't seem like there's as much of a hierarchy where they're all kind of have a mutual understanding of what is inevitably out there. And maybe it's a point that we eventually kind of have to get to that point, and they're waiting for us to get to a point where we all kind of have the same base of knowledge so that we can function the same as some of these other more advanced races or beings.
Well, I'm saying let's look at what we see. So when you talk about the 20 and back technology, when you look at any corporation in the world, the most expensive component is labor. Coca-Cola, it's labor. They're trying to invent robots to do less. So because you got to pay people money to live. They have to stay alive, and you have to get them medical and taxes and all this stuff. So labor is the most expensive component of pretty much every company. There's a lot of companies that are passive, whatever, but the most part, labor is a big deal. So when we look at what's happening with the 20 and back tech, we are a labor force, and they can come down and take us for 20 years and take us into space and do their labor and then put us back and get more of us. And it's just this field of billions of us that they can just come and grab. So when you look at that, like, why would they tell us anything beyond you just stay in the world and just don't worry about it? You guys just check it out. There's a football game.
If we need you, we'll call you.
Yeah. Well, don't look up. It's flat. It's a dome. It's a firmament. Don't look up. It's a simulation. Don't look up. They're demons. It's evil. It's a sin. Don't look up. Don't even bother looking into space. There's the football game. There you go. And it's been like this for thousands of years, and we're getting to the point where we have the technology. They have to kill us, or they have to let us get into space, and that's where we're at right now. It's literally that. It's literally that cut and dry. They either have to let us get into space, or they're gonna have to kill us. And so, or come down and like take us over in some radical like this Hollywood blockbuster of a space invasion, something like that. Like. Who knows? But I have to feel like, we're ready for it. And we're not the first planet that got this far. in the cosmos. We're not the first planet that had a disclosure event coming. So they know what they're doing. They've been using us for a long time, and now we're going to shift to a different relationship with the groups in space. And that's really what's up there. It's not one species. They all group together. Thousands of worlds group together and make one unit or one organization, so that when they travel, they can say, I'm with these guys. They travel somewhere else that nobody's ever been, and they meet the species there, and they come out and they're going to take their spaceship from them and say, I'm with those guys, and an army will show up if you rob us. And so because oh wow, that was a bubble. So I'm affiliated with all those people around the Orion system. We got reptilians that'll come kick your butt. So don't mess with us. And then they go there's another group all over space. You talk about a galactic federation, like Star Trek.
I was going to say, it sounds a lot like the whole Star Trek concept, that there's like the group together races, and then they come into a new area together. And then there's this new one. They're like, all right, you can join the Federation or figure it out yourself.
If you go up there by yourself, you're on your own. And somebody might come along and clobber you, and nobody's going to do anything about it because you're not affiliated with any of the groups. But if you're a member of the Federation, for instance, and somebody clobbers you, we're going to send people to investigate. And that keeps the peace. And so that's what I remember of it being up there. And then most of the contact between species of spacefaring species was about technological trade. They want to trade something. So, there isn't a common currency. It's knowledge is the currency. So they want to trade technology for stuff. We need stuff. You guys have a certain element on your world that we don't have. We want tons of it. We'll give you a math equation that'll make your cars be better. And that's really how it works. So was the culture that I remember working in when I was on Ceres Colony.
Wow. So we'll definitely have to come back again for another round, because I still have so much different stuff that I want to dive into with you. It's been an absolutely great conversation, but
we didn't even cover the technology I'm working on. I got a place called Scion.com. I've been using harmonics for binaurals and programming for remote viewing and static electricity, like reverse engineering obelisks. I've been working on a lot of stuff. It's kicking ass. Scion.com is PSIION. And I got 3 binaurals on there. I'm going to have 12 to 14, and I'm going to have the obelisk on there with a video that explains how it all works. Everybody loves them. They've been selling like hotcakes, and that's the project I'm working on. And I got my 4th book I'm working on. I'm sorry, I'm spitting out my shameless plugs right now. And then you can find me on TonyRodrigues.com, and on the Alpha group, I teach remote viewing every Sunday in live groups. I've had a lot of people go through there. It's a load of fun. Anybody can remote view. You can access data from outside time space through many methods. I think I'll leave it at that. We'll talk next time, man. I got a ton of stuff I'm working on. Maple Street Learning is a learning company based on the school that I went to when I was up there. When I was on Mars, they put me through school to become a ship maintenance technician. And for that method of learning, I'm trying to reverse engineer. I have investors. I have an AI engineering team. We have a lot of stuff going on. We'll come out with. That's why the audio products were born from that technology. And so some of the audio products I'm making I think are some of the best in the world. And that's why we started the sister company, Scion.com. Maple Street Learning is going to be an advanced learning technology, a software. Hopefully it gets done in a year or so. It's a big lift. I don't have a ton of money to pay for AI, but we're working on it. There's a lot of people that understand the mission and they're dedicated, and it's working. So we've already got the audio technology. It took me a year and a half to do the audio and sort it out, and it's really high-tech stuff. It's not a standard binaural. These are tuned to the golden mean of charge collapse down to the Planck distance, and they have a very profound effect on people who listen to them. They work. They kick ass. So.
Well, I guess that's already what we're going to be diving into on the next round. So we'll definitely have to make sure we set that up sooner rather than later. And
that's right. Anytime, Shayn, let me know, bro.
Absolutely. We'll hopefully get into it in the next couple of weeks. We'll have to set something up. I'll text back and forth to you. We'll make sure that we get back to this one again sooner rather than later. Stay tuned, guys. This is our last break. But if you enjoyed the show and think I deserve it, please leave a review or rating for the show on iTunes, Spotify, or any other podcatcher you use. Your continued support is what makes this show possible, and your opinions go a long way to help the show grow and improve. So thank you. Now feel free to skip past these ads so we can get back to the show. Now back with that deep conversation you crave. And I always
Very
like
cool.
to wrap up the show with some words of wisdom. So if there was any words of wisdom that you might want to bestow on the listeners today, what might it be?
You know, the easiest one for me from all of it was when I got my memories back in one day. Boom. One day I woke up and I remember it was 20 years of memories all unfolded in my mind. And I thought I was going crazy. I was like, I need help. I need counseling. But then I went on Google Earth and imagine never knowing a town in northern Michigan. If you've never been there, there's these little towns. And imagine all of a sudden waking up one day and having 2 years of memories in northern Michigan, and then looking on the map and that town's real. And at that point, I was scared for my life, and I knew that I couldn't keep it all to myself. And I had to make a conscious decision. And what I realized is I was living my whole life afraid of what might happen, did I say the wrong thing? Is this not me? I was playing it safe because I was afraid of everything my whole entire life. That decision to go forward made me say, look, I'm going to quit being afraid of stuff. I'm going to quit being afraid of my own shadow. And it's not up to me. If I do something and somebody else clobbers me for it, it's up to them. It's not my fault. If I'm speaking the truth and somebody gets mad at me, it's not my fault. It's their fault if they can't accept the truth. And so I had to quit being afraid of everything, of what might happen, and just start thinking about what is happening. And I got to tell you, man, my whole entire life changed. And I recommend it to every human being on earth. Quit making decisions based on what might happen because of fear, and make your decisions based on what is, and not afraid. Just what I want, and this is it. And it's tough shit. And if I say something that you don't like, it's your fault. It's not mine, because I'm telling you the truth, and I don't have the intention of hurting anybody. I really don't. I said a lot of stuff in this show that I think might hurt somebody's feelings, but I got to tell you, it's not my intention to hurt anybody's feelings, man. It's a place of love to tell somebody the truth. And so to get out of that fear mindset is my words of wisdom.
I definitely can appreciate that. And I definitely can stand from a point of saying, I agree with the fact that if there's anything that anybody wants to go out and do, don't be afraid to do it. Do the things that you want to do. Don't be afraid of the ridicule. That'll all pass. Like, be your true, honest, authentic self. And at the end of the day, that's all you can be. Don't go out with the intention of hurting other people. Just tell them how it is. Tell them the truth. Some people don't like hearing the truth, but I mean, at the end of the day, at least you can say that you were an honest, authentic person. So, and just the last thing to kind of wrap everything up, I don't know if you mentioned it when you were mentioning your other websites and everything, but if anybody wanted to pick up your first book that kind of dives a little bit more into your experiences, your second book, your third book, or even possibly contact you to sort out their own experiences or anything like that, where can people find your books at, and where can people contact you?
You can find them all on TonyRodrigues.com. You can go to Amazon and look for Tony Rodrigues or Series Colony Cavalier or Beyond Sight, but they're all linked from TonyRodrigues.com, my website. You can get to my Patreon from there. You can email me. And the consultations, I really don't want to do them anymore, so they're priced at like $300, but I just don't have time for them. There's so many people I drop the ball with. But you can email me through there. It's slow, but the best way to get a hold of me and to participate is my Patreon. In 2020, most of my YouTubes got deleted, and I went behind a paywall in Patreon, and it's what I do for a living now. And it's mostly remote viewing and live classes and Q&As and stuff. So you can get in there and be free and send me messages. It's cool. And that's it. So, and then all the other stuff, like I said, I got to put a link to scion.com through my website, but I'm trying to keep it faceless because the technology, I think, is for everybody.
Well, man, I appreciate you again making the time to come on today. It was really nice catching back up with you. We'll definitely have to plan a round 2, maybe even a round 3 or round 4. I guess we'll have to play it out because I got a list of stuff sitting here that I definitely want to dive back into you with. But I didn't want to open that can of worms today. So,
yeah, I love it. I'm down. So this is a great talk, a great conversation. So thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed today's conversation and want to show some love, smash that follow icon and share today's episode with a friend. Grassroots support from listeners like you is exactly how this show grows. So thank you. And if anyone would like to get in touch with me for any other reason whatsoever, you guys can get a hold of me through email, which is inquiriesaboutrealitypodcast@outlook.com, or through social media. Instagram and Facebook are the ones that I'm the most active on. Or you guys can also get a hold of me through the submission form, which of course is available on the link tree up at the top. And you guys can also get a hold of me through the hotline number. You guys can text or call, whatever happens to be easier for you guys. And that number is 313-364-1551. And if you guys have some free time, don't forget to check out the awesome friends of the show, IKNOWSQUATCH, Snarly Young Natural Products, Cryptoteeology, and Big Ape Threads, and our friends with affiliate links, Dimension Devices, Oregon-ite, and Sticker Mule, with additional discounts and credits available. More information on those is available down in the show notes. And every single thing that I mentioned is all available in the link tree, which is also available down in those show notes. And with that, hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. Hope today's show has connected some dots in your own reality. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Have a good night, everybody.
Reality isn't what it seems. Abductees taking aboard a craft with a tractor beam. Is life a simulation or an astral dream? Aliens travel through black holes in different galaxies. Life is a bizarre odyssey, with a mic talking about philosophy. Well, Bigfoot is stalking campers as a Wendigo walks through the woods of sharpened antlers, using a Ouija board to talk to the dead like a necromancer. There's so many questions and not enough answers. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormal